Hello, glad you can join us. In this episode, we are discussing effective audit reports, working well with remote teams, and the new Global Internal Audit Standards. Stay tuned.
The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit.
The IIA recently released an exposure draft of the new Global Internal Audit Standards as part of its IPPF Evolution project. More than 2 years of work went into developing the exposure draft, which reflects significant input from practitioners and stakeholders such as regulators, corporate directors, and standard-setting bodies. Now it's time for internal auditors around the world to weigh in. Obviously, much work remains to be done before the updated standards are finalized and go into effect, but what is clear is that the proposed standards represent a dramatic change to the profession's governing documents. Here's the IIA's Alec Pierce and the IIA's President and CEO, Anthony Pugliese, discussing this milestone moment.
Thank you for joining us today, Anthony. To start off with, can you give us some background on the Global Internal Audit Standards transformation?
The standard really has come about, the revision to the IPPF has come about as a result of a lot of member feedback over the years. We've really been trying to capture, as what we were first doing was trying to revisit whether we needed revisions to the standard, and our members told us that there were a lot of different things that were needed to modernize the standards. And that'll be the subject of some of the other conversations that you'll hear in this overall recording. But we really wanted to make sure we captured all the feedback from our affiliates. First and foremost is to understand the breadth of change that was needed. So IIA enjoys what we call our Global Assembly, where we have all 115 of our affiliates join us, both the CEO and the chair, and give us feedback on the topics we need. So we had the privilege of having them start the process with what needs to be changed in the IPPF. And that input includes the governance structures of all 115 affiliates. So it was very robust. And then we go through the process of collecting input from all of our committees. So that would be whether we're talking about the standards board itself, the global board of directors, our North American board, our certifications board, and all the committees like chapter relations committee is what exactly do we have consensus on? So we built that up and we charged our standards board, which is an amazing group of people who have worked tirelessly for close to 2 years to bring this project to where it is now, more than 2 years. We wrote the first draft of the standards, and then we literally traveled the world to show those standards to a group of stakeholders, 81 at last count that we had spoken to in person. We assembled them in groups, and some were one-on-one, where we gave them the overview and told them what we were trying to accomplish, both on behalf of the profession and on the employers and stakeholders that we serve, audit committees and boards of directors, and the general public who rely on financial and other types of data that we are part of as a profession. So that process culminated in what we have now, which is our new revised Global Internal Auditing Standards. It was extremely robust. And in the stakeholder groups, I should mention, there were regulators, there were legislators, there were representatives from the financial services industry, the public sector, other associations where our members may belong or may have a vested interest in the outcome. So we felt like we covered a lot of bases, and that was to get us to exposure draft. So now we have already issued the first draft, and we want everyone to tell us what they think and how it would work in practice and where we may have missed something, or maybe where we need to expand or even explain further something we've put in there. So it's been quite a wonderful journey. Something that began as a revision has become something I think will be fundamentally change for the profession, like literally getting to the DNA of what we do every day.
So the exposure draft is available now, and we're looking for comments from the internal audit community.
So as we put our standards out for public exposure, we are asking that literally, we get feedback, impressions, and the exposure draft will be available. It is available in 25 languages, including the survey that we want everyone reviewing it to look at. It is a large body of knowledge. We estimated at about 45,000 words. That doesn't mean it's enough or too many, too little. It's just where we landed. But that's a lot to read. So we don't expect commenters to read it cover to cover, although many of us here have. But it's really important to weigh in on the areas that are of particular interest or concern, or areas where you may have realized there was a need for change and that you were particularly focused on.
One of the significant changes is how the standards are presented. Could we discuss that briefly?
Sure. One of the biggest points of feedback when we originally started this project was the standards needed to be organized in a more logical way, but also in a more meaningful way that really reflected, if somebody were to pick them up, they would have a quick understanding of what they contained. And then you'd be a quick, easy way for a member or a stakeholder to understand where in our standards they needed to find whatever it was they were looking for. So we organized all that material into what we call domains. So there are 5 domains, and hopefully they are rather common sense. We have the purpose of internal auditing, where there was a lot of work put into making sure we defined what we thought the profession was as it exists in 2023. And the next domain is ethics and professionalism. Then we have governing the internal audit function, and we get into a lot of detail there. Next domain is managing the internal audit function. And then probably the largest of all the domains is performing internal audit services, where we get into all the detail of the day-to-day things that our members should consider as they do the work that they've been charged to do. So in each of our 5 domains that I just mentioned, each standard now incorporates information on implementation and conformance. And for the first time, the standards directly address the responsibilities of the board of directors in their support of an effective and an independent internal audit function. And the domain on managing the internal audit function now provides detailed directions to assist the chief audit executive in doing the jobs that they do every day. And the domain on performing internal audit services provides robust details on doing the work of internal auditing.
One of the phrases we'll be hearing in discussions about the proposed Global Internal Audit Standards is that conformance doesn't equal performance. What does that mean?
Conformance doesn't equal performance. So in a nutshell, we know that performing high quality internal audit work is more than just conforming to rules or standards. It requires a lot of subjective thinking, a lot of high level critical thinking. So the proposed standards really raise the bar for internal audit performance by requiring strategic planning and performance metrics for the internal audit function. So that's different. And it's really making sure we remind our members that conforming to the standards means more than just reading and complying to the letter of each word. And the standards for the board in Domain 3 promote additional board oversight of internal audit performance, which will lead to greater assistance and understanding on internal audit by the board of directors.
So the proposed standards are not just about raising performance. They're also designed to make the standards more relevant and user-friendly. Could you tell me about that?
So incorporating implementation and conformance information into each standard will help internal auditors understand how the related principles apply to their day-to-day work. And the new format brings together information that was previously dispersed across several of the IPPF elements, as you know. And the new purpose of internal auditing statement clarifies how the work we do as a profession supports the organization's success and is simple and direct enough to be that kind of long sought after elevator speech describing our profession and what we do.
We know you're keenly interested in recruiting the next generation of internal auditors. How do the proposed Global Internal Audit Standards prepare the next generation of internal auditors to succeed?
Well, the Global Internal Auditing Standards actually become the body of knowledge that represent our entire profession. I had called that earlier the DNA. And our exam performs, it's also part of the DNA of our profession globally. So by having a robust, up-to-date, modernized body of knowledge, we actually have a far more usable tool to educate students and other people entering the profession and need to understand what internal auditing is about. So, it brings clarity to what internal audit does versus what we had before. More clarity, it's more modern, it reflects a lot of the thinking and the technology that we have today. And that's not just for our members, but also for the stakeholders that are relying on our members to do what they do, which is oversight. They provide robust support for ethical conduct and professional performance. There's a lot more ethical decisions that are made in today's age than perhaps 20 or 30 years ago. We have all sorts of things like artificial intelligence and other things that require different level of ethics to be applied. This helps with that and help others understand what the profession does. They help make the board a true partner in effective internal auditing. We all know that the function must be independent. It should report to the board of directors, and it clarifies that in no unclear terms. The standards also provide a lot more guidance on managing the internal audit function and performing internal audit services. And that clarity lets somebody who hasn't previously been a part of the profession or is a student learning about it just have a clearer vision of what their about to do, what they're walking into. And I think a clearer vision that articulates more the robustness of internal audit and how much it covers, and frankly, how dynamic and smart a career choice it really is. And the standards really do all of that the way we've refined them. And they provide a framework on how we improve performance. So maybe you're the first year internal auditor looking on how that works, and the standards can be used for that purpose, among other things.
Any closing thoughts for us?
Yes, absolutely. I think we've mentioned a few times that a lot of hard work has gone into the exposure draft, and I mean like years of hard work. And I particularly want to thank the IIA Standards Board and all the volunteers who were part of that, who developed the draft and went along this journey with us, this global multi-year journey to get us to where we are. And for the staff at IIA that spent literally weekends and holidays and all the normal work hours getting this to where it was effectively released last week. So the IIA will move very quickly to incorporate the feedback that we hear into a draft that we will present to our global board of directors in July when they meet in Amsterdam at our international conference. So just some closing thoughts on timing and next steps, and some much deserved thanks to everyone who's been involved with this.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Anthony.
My pleasure.
I want to remind our audience that the exposure draft is available for your review, and we encourage you to take the time to read and comment.
Do stakeholders seem disinterested or even push back on your audit department's reports? In our next segment, Margie Bastolla sits down with Madison Rorschach to share some tips to improve your reports from the IIA's soon-to-be-released book, Clarity, Impact, Speed, Delivering Audit Reports That Matter.
Hi, I'm Madison Rorschach, City Auditor for the City of Denton, Texas, and I'm joined today by Margie Bastolla, CIA. Thanks for joining me, Margie.
Hi, Madison. Nice to be here.
Awesome. So you presented here at the Ignite conference today on delivering audit reports that matter. And effective audit reports are, of course, always top of mind for internal audit leaders. What is your primary focus when you take on this subject in a presentation?
I really want everyone to focus on the reader, because that determines what your messaging is. And if you think about all the people that read audit reports, there's a variety of readers, all the way from the process owners to members on the board, and sometimes people in the community that are reading our reports. And you've got to think about, what do they need? Most people that read your audit reports, they're what I would call experts in the business world, but they're just not familiar with that particular audit that you worked on. So people that are experts but not familiar with a particular area, they don't want to necessarily become an expert.
Right.
They just want you to get the main points out to them. They want you to use common, everyday business language. They don't want jargon. They don't want lots of detail. They want you to get to the point.
Cool. So you recently completed a second edition of your book, Clarity, Impact, Speed, Delivering Audit Reports That Matter. Have any of the fundamentals to effective audit reports changed?
I would say the first book was written and published in 2011 by author Sally Kotler, and I was honored that the IIA asked me to update that book. And what I would say has changed is that we tend to be more focused now, and this is a good thing, on the audit report development process, with the goal of getting that report out sooner. And I think too, many audit departments, they know that they want clear, concise writing, but they also want to focus on the messaging as well. So I see the changes being mostly in the process itself and getting it out more quickly, and then focusing on the messaging that serves the reader.
That's awesome. So your presentation talks about the 7 deadly audit report mistakes.
Yes.
And I know we can't go into all of them today, but what are kind of the key takeaways from that list?
Well, there were several things that I talked about, instead of focusing on internal audit, and sometimes our reports sound like it's really about us. We use a lot of audit jargon, we use audit terms, we talk about our processes, our tests, and really the readers don't care about that. They just want you to get to the point.
Yes.
So don't focus on ourselves, focus on your reader. Or things like some people think that pretty reports really wow people. But really, yeah, a pretty report's nice, but it's only as pretty as the message. And people will focus sometimes too much on design elements and the template versus, but what's the message? What's the content? And that's where I try to really encourage people to have actionable, impactful content.
Okay, really cool. So beyond precise and effective writing, the reporting process also involves how internal auditors interact with clients and how quickly reports are developed. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think for many of audit shops today, and especially many of the clients that I work with, is there's a frustration that it takes too long. Not only does it take too long, but the process is arduous. And I think that so much of it would be better if we follow a few little guidelines. You know, writing and auditing are not, they are parallel processes, right? Not consecutive processes. And I think because most of us don't really like the task of writing, we push it off. And so we get finished with the work, and then all of a sudden we've got to write this report, and it's painful. And it may even be incomplete because we don't have all the information or we've forgotten it. So one of the things in terms of process, you've got to start from the beginning. As soon as you find something, start writing it down in a template, not necessarily the final report, but some sort of preliminary document that shows the 5 elements of a finding, all of those things. And then early on, start interacting with someone, whether it's your team leader or maybe it's your team, and say, am I going in the right direction? Because people, the challenge in writing an audit finding more has to do with the direction, and do I have the right content here? And once people can get that correct, then they can go in and make it clear and concise, but not before. So focus on writing early, focus on reviews early, and focus on interacting with your client. As soon as when you have it, present it and get them to start agreeing and coming with action plans. But hand it to them in some sort of written format. Because I don't know about you, but you can talk to them about it and, oh yeah, we agree. But when you put it in writing, it changes.
Yes.
So do it early.
They always have that one word that they really don't like.
So be transparent from the beginning, and it's just so much better.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking with me today and sharing your insights. And I'm happy to remind everybody to look out for your book, Clarity, Impact, Speed, Delivering Audit Reports That Matter, which will be available at the IAA.org in the coming months.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
to be with you.
You too.
And now for a bit of challenging fun we call In Focus. The question, which generation has the most internal audit leaders, according to the respondents to the Pulse survey? Is it Generation X, Baby Boomers, or Millennials? No Googling, we'll be back with the correct answer in just a few.
I am Dana Lawrence. I am the Director of FinTech Compliance at Pacific West Bank. Growing up, I was definitely on the quiet and reserved side, and even from an early age in school, I never wanted to raise my hand or speak in front of the class. I really got intentional about working on my public speaking and confidence skills a couple years into my career when I realized that folks who had that outward confidence and felt really comfortable speaking, they were more charismatic in business settings, I saw those people get promotions. And I really was motivated, I was ambitious, I was getting my certifications, I was working hard, yet I wasn't really getting those leadership positions that I was really wanting. So at that point, I did some reflection and really made it my mission to learn how to be more confident. And it really started with putting myself out there and learning public speaking. I think confidence in public speaking is quite important to internal audit. There is a fair amount of heads down work. There's analysis and critical thinking. And at the end of the day, we also need to be able to communicate the results. We need to be able to speak with confidence to our team members, our leaders, and our audit clients. And sometimes we're in situations, maybe in an exit interview or a difficult meeting, where confidence in your communication is really going to be the key difference between making an impact or not. When I realized I wanted to develop my confidence and learn how to feel more comfortable public speaking, I enlisted the help of my community. How I did that was I approached people I admired and I said, hey, will you go out to coffee with me? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can you mentor me? Can you have a conversation with me? Were you always a confident person? If not, how did you get there? And I started having these different conversations and hearing different clips and ideas from various people. I also started raising my hand and putting myself into positions where I had an opportunity to practice putting myself out there. Maybe I would challenge myself to speak up in a team meeting. Maybe I would get involved with my local Institute of Internal Auditors chapter. I signed up to be the vice president of luncheons, and I was the person responsible for introducing the guests. And that was literally 1 to 2 minutes of speaking in front of a group, and it was absolutely terrifying. I also knew it was great practice. It took me a lot of iterations to start feeling more comfortable with my public speaking. I would always find flaws. I would always find faults, kind of second guess how I did. And I was able to put that to the side and instead focus on, I'm putting myself out there. I'm dedicating my time back to the community. I'm trying to help and make things better. And there was a point in time where I realized, wow, I'm not doing a 1-minute introduction. I'm the keynote, or I'm able to confidently speak my ideas in a team meeting. Whereas before I would just sit there quietly and, feel frustrated. So I don't think there was ever, one big moment in time, but it was the realization over time that the things that really used to terrify me, the things that were unthinkable, I was actually doing those things. I was actually growing. And one key moment was actually the 2022 IAA and ISACA GRC conference. I was the MC. It was in person. It was a multi-day event. And a lot of it was off the cuff. A lot of it was, getting the crowd excited. And as I was reflecting, it was just a real interesting moment to think, wow, I used to be the person who would never even say a word in a team meeting. And now I am on a stage in front of thousands of people and I'm having fun. And this is amazing. When I think of the work that I'm doing today and how public speaking ties in, it's less about speaking in front of a large group of people. It's more about feeling comfortable in my own skin, feeling confident to really have difficult conversations. That's something I love to talk to internal auditors about, because throughout your career, you are going to be bringing up themes and information that might be challenging for management to hear. And having a sense of confidence in yourself to be able to have some of those different conversations, to be able to be challenged and to reflect and respond within the course of a conversation. I think that is the most valuable thing I've gained from doing all this work in public speaking. It really boils down to how I can show up in day-to-day interactions, feeling confident in my communications. I just want to encourage you. I think that a lot of people struggle with having authentic confidence and the ability to speak up. And I really think that the world is a better place. Your workplace is better. Your communities are stronger when people find that genuine confidence to share what their thoughts and feelings are. So I'm rooting for you.
And now the answer to our In Focus challenge, which posed the question, Which generation has the most internal audit leaders according to the respondents to the Pulse survey? Among the internal audit leaders who took the Pulse survey, 59% of positions were filled by Generation X, 30% were filled by baby boomers, and 11% by millennials. For more insightful information on the profession, read the 2022 Pulse Report at theiia.org and look for the 2023 edition this month. Moving to a hybrid or remote work environment has required that leaders adapt the way they work with others. Growth, promotion, and learning has evolved in hybrid environments, and the way we deliver feedback has changed as well. Jeannette Buttler has tips on successfully leading and having difficult conversations with hybrid or remote teams.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Jones, Director with the IA, and I'm joined today by Jeannette Buttler, Manager at Shellman. Hey, Jeannette.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me. And of course, we're going to talk about your presentation at Ignite that addressed how to manage difficult conversations in a remote or hybrid team setting. So you started your presentation by discussing being the manager that you always wanted. How does that concept frame this conversation?
Yeah, so I think when I first started working, I had a lot of really bad managers. So I didn't want to be that manager to my direct reports. And I just really wanted to be more of a kind and empathetic manager.
So that also must include how the organization creates an environment for high-performing teams.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that I've really focused on is creating an environment of consistency. So that includes emotional consistency, expectations set forth for direct reports. So just being able to be consistent day to day, that really helps someone excel in their career so that they're not coming to you with questions and not knowing how you're going to react. That was a big thing for me. I had a lot of managers that I would never know what their mood was going to be. I didn't know what the expectations were. So when you're laying out expectations very clearly for your direct reports, that's going to create a better, just a better environment for them to thrive in. And I think another part of that is authenticity. So just being really authentic, knowing that you're bringing your whole self to work, knowing that people make mistakes, people have bad days, and just really rolling with that.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. And that also goes to another key part of the conversation, which was building rapport within your team. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I think building rapport in a remote environment is just like a little bit different as well. One of the things that I think it might sound a little controversial from a manager perspective, but really just like not reaching out to people when their status is away. So I think that kind of is the equivalent of being in the office and someone being away from their desk. Maybe they're out to lunch, maybe they're in the bathroom. So I think just creating those boundaries between people and not reaching out to them when they're away is a big deal. I think also making sure that you're asking someone if you can call them, so you're not just calling them whenever, and just really setting tone correctly within messaging versus phone calls.
And that goes to building that rapport. That's a critical part, and you were distinguishing that there are some differences between the remote setting and in person, just to kind of piggyback off what you just said. What are some additional takeaways from those differences that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I think sharing credit is really important, and it's a little different in the remote environment. So, when you're in the office, someone might do something and then you might be like, oh, this is a great job, and other people might overhear, but that's not going to happen in a remote environment. So really you need to be more intentional with how you're sharing credit. So one of the ways I do that, we have a bi-weekly call with our staff. So it's really good time to spotlight anyone, talk about what people are doing, and even if people have found like more efficient ways to do certain processes that everyone is required to do, we let them show that process as well.
How does your team respond to that call?
So they really like it. At first, it was hard to get people engaged just because, it's just another call kind of on their calendar. But I think once we showed that this is an opportunity for people to step up and show that what they're doing and how they're excelling, then they want to be more engaged with that.
And that's really important. Back to your presentation yesterday, keeping people engaged, a huge part, especially being a manager.
Yeah.
Another tough part about being a manager is having difficult conversations. How should you handle that remotely? Because it's very different from being in person.
Yeah, so when I think about all the difficult conversations, there's like a lot of different variation, right? So like putting someone on like a performance improvement plan is obviously the first thing that comes to mind, but there could be a lot of other things like promotion or delegation. So really handling those remotely is like based on the same things that it's handled in person too. First, you need to establish trust with those employees. If you don't have trust in a relationship, then it's really gonna be hard to build upon that relationship. So I think a lot of that stems from doing like the day-to-day tasks, but it also does extend from building like a more in-depth relationship. So even though I'm in a remote environment, we also meet in person with our team at least quarterly. So I think that really helps build on that trust. And then having that difficult conversation becomes a little bit easier once you have built more of a relationship with someone.
And one thing that I like that you said was use the word relationship in conjunction with trust. And it is a two-way street, two-way conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think building the relationship should be at the forefront of a manager's mind before the actual objective of the difficult conversation. So you might just want to go into it kind of getting it over with, being like, you're not meeting expectations or something like that. But it's really important to build the relationship so that person is able to listen to you. Offering candor and being blunt is not going to be effective if they don't have a relationship with you. That person's immediately just going to go into their shell.
And yesterday, there was a lot of activity in the chat when you brought this up. And I think a lot of managers, especially young managers, can relate to this. So what is the mind frame or the mindset that you get yourself in before having those types of conversations?
Yeah, so I think number one is you have to make sure that this kind of discussion, like for example, if you are doing a performance improvement plan discussion or like giving poor feedback, you really need to understand if it's just you that is seeing this or if it is being seen across the organization. If some other manager is seeing this and you're the one that needs to discuss it with them, then you really need to make sure you're also owning that. You can't go into a discussion and be like, so-and-so told me you're not doing well. You need to really understand how the person's going to react, what they're going to say, and how you're going to move forward from that. So you really just can't, you need to own the feedback.
Jeannette, thanks so much for joining me today, and we appreciate your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments, or a rating. If you'd like to enjoy an extended version of the discussions featured today, visit theiia.org, where IIA members get access to a longer version of this episode with more information and insights on report writing and managing remote teams. The Analytics and Automation Conference, April 20th, 2023, is a one-day experience designed to help internal auditors stay ahead of critical issues and be more responsive in their work. Register now. Members save an additional 10% when they register by March 10th, 2023. For info, visit theiia.org conferences. Thanks for joining us for all things internal audit from the IIA. We'll connect again soon.